About 12 years ago, Ron Mannix, who is quite an entrepreneur in businessman, very substantial activity in the community, called me up out of the blue and said, Roger, would you like to have breakfast with me? And I said, yes. I mean, I sort of knew who he was. And I said, yes. What do you want to talk about? And he said, well, actually, I want you to come and I want to tell you what I want to talk about when we have breakfast. So I said, where do you want to go? So we went to a pancake house on a Saturday morning, right? And so we were sitting there having our pancakes, and he said, you're the Olympic guy. And I said, yeah. And he said, what impresses me is you have this broad international vision. You think worldwide and world scale, and you achieve things. And I've talked with a lot of people who know you, and I've decided that I'd like to ask you if you would chair our music foundation and help us be world class. And I thought, isn't that, it wasn't that I was sort of self-pleased with this accolade. What I was saying is, here is somebody who thinks broadly and knows that you need to go and find interesting people with broad scale and energy and whatever to do really important projects, and that he spent some time trying to figure out who that might be, and it happened for whatever reason to be me. So we chatted about it, and he said, what's your interest in music? And I said, well, I'll tell you, if I could have given up being a world-class athlete to being a world-class jazz pianist, I would do it in a heartbeat. Because at some point in my career, I was singing in choirs and wanted to pursue music. And the lure of football and basketball and eventually rowing and then the intensity of what I was doing took me totally away. But I said, I have a jazz collection of things that, and every time I listen to it, I say, I would love to be creative. I would love, no matter how good I became, I would love to be able to play music and to enjoy learning on my own and learning, to improvise and explore. Because to me, I enjoyed more the training part than the competing part. I was more interested in learning how to do things better, to become more strong, to become more effective, to become a more strategic racer. All of that was more challenging intellectually to me than the 7 minutes of hell of a race, right? So it wasn't the gold medal or the race that kept me rowing. It was more the journey and the learning. So that's what I'd like to do, and I have always wanted to do. So this was sort of a vicarious entree into it. So we hosted an international organ competition for a number of years. Ron Mannix had created an international organ festival. I asked him, I said, why are you interested in music? And he told me his commitment to it, and from his mother and from his family, that they had donated the Carthay organ to this art center here in Calgary, and that he had built this amazing collection at that point in time, and he wanted to have one of the world's great keyboard collections. So everything he talked about was world class. Everything that he wanted to do and the ambition where he wanted to go, in my opinion, was really worth doing. And therefore it was worth my time, and I was privileged to have been asked to contribute. So over a period of time, we have built the organization through a couple of different name changes, more recently the Cantos Music Foundation, and now, immediately a couple of months ago, we changed our name to the National Music Center, and we're now about to go into the next brand new phase of who we are, which is to build a major new national music center for the city of Calgary and for Canada. The National Music Center has metamorphosed from a number of things. We used to host the world's greatest organ competition. We used to have playdowns around the world, bring the best people to Calgary, and then had a several-day competition here in Calgary using the Calgary Philharmonic and other groups in town to create something that was spectacular. We also used to contribute organs to churches, to universities, Carthay organ to the Art Center here as well. We've restored musical instruments. We've built our collection by picking up prized instruments around the world that would fill our collection. We've run a number of school programs over the years, and probably 10 to 12,000 school children a year come through the center to learn about music and art, or music and mathematics, or just music and harmonics, or whatever. So there's been a very interesting community connection to what we have been in the past. We decided, though, that we really should try to do something more of a national scale, and maybe even more of an international scale from time to time. And we decided we also needed to create a brand new building. We were in a building which we now own, but it's a limestone building, and it's a historic building, and it's very difficult to create the temperature control and all the other requirements of a real proper museum. So we decided about 3 or 4 years ago that why not raise $130 million and go out and build ourselves a new center. And that's sort of Ron Mannix and his attitude and view that we should really create more of a clubhouse, a center where we could have recording studios for emerging artists, where we could have a radio station, and we're discussing the matter with CKUA here in Alberta, which is a very Alberta-based group, where we could put our collection, which is one of the great keyboard collections in the world, if not right at the very top. And we have 80% of it in storage and only 20% of it on display for the public that comes to our current building. So we needed gallery space. Then we wanted to create a whole bunch of performance spaces, because we really want to promote the art of music, the love of music, how it can affect lives, and how it can create enjoyment and education and all kinds of benefits. But we want to be able to touch each of those areas in some way. So we have about a dozen performance spaces in the design of the new building, along with some of the other things you'd expect in a museum of educational spaces and galleries. A very interesting story about the beginning of the building. We decided that we wanted an international competition to design the building. We wanted this to be an incredibly iconic building, but something that was very functional. So we sent out a request for proposal to major architectural groups around the world. We had 70 architectural firms apply. We had a panel of 12 people who were musicians, architects, builders, and so on, review the proposals. We came down and chose 5. We gave each of the 5 $50,000 and said, in 30 days, come to the Grand Theatre in Calgary. We're going to open it up to all the architects, engineers, builders, and whatever, anybody in Calgary who wants to come, and we want you to do a 30-minute presentation and give us your best stuff. I mean, we really want you to shine and show us what your vision is for the center. So we have architects from Paris, New York, Los Angeles, Montreal, and Portland. And they gave their presentations, and then the next day we spent 12 hours going over which of those groups we felt caught the spirit and the meaning of who we are in the West, Alberta, the landscape, the people, the music, the vision that we had for being an educational entertainment center, a community center, a center fostering young artists, and so on. And we chose a group called Allied Works from Portland, Oregon, who for the last 2 years, almost 2 years now, have been designing this most incredibly beautiful, iconic building that we're about to start construction on this fall. So we're almost there with yet another great adventure. You know, when we were looking at sites, I wanted to put a site close to the river, where we could actually use the river as part of the venue so that it would be very publicly accessible. And that vision came from me because for 2 years after I left the university, I worked in London full time. And I lived right beside the National Arts Centre in London. And it was right on the river with cafes and bookstores and whatever. And I was always, every night, walking along the river, had the ambiance of art and culture and theater and cinema and restaurants and the beautiful Thames River. And this was all the south bank of the Thames. And I thought that would be marvelous to duplicate. Andrew Mosker, who is our president and CEO, who knows more about music than I will ever know, and who's been the spirit of this building, said, we've got to restore the King Eddie Hotel. The King Eddie Hotel used to be the blues bar. All of the BB Kings of this world and their guitars and their groups and whatever would come along the railway and come to Calgary, and that's the place they played. And for years, it was known as the music center of blues and other relative genres related to blues music. But the hotel was beat up and old and had been closed and mothballed, and the city at first wanted to demolish it and build a high-rise and get some rental income from it and tax income from it and so on. So we approached them and said, look, it's a historic building. We want to embrace it and restore it. We want to bring it back to being a wonderful restaurant. We don't want it to be sanitized. We want it to have a bit of a gritty feel to it, is what it used to be. So, but we want music there every lunch hour, every evening, and we'll build our new building, this most modern, iconic building, around it, nestling it in its arms, and we'll take care of it as the historic site. And the Municipal Land Authority, the City of Calgary, and all of us just thought, this is the best idea. This is great. And so that's what we've been planning for the last 2 or 3 years.